phone rings. You answer it, and for a moment, nothing. Just a faint hiss of static, like an old television tuned to a dead channel. Then a voice comes through the receiver.
7 days.
That's it. That's all you get. No explanation, no negotiation, just a deadline. That's the premise behind The Ring, one of the most disturbing horror stories ever told. Watch a certain videotape, and you have exactly 1 week to live. Most people know this story from the movies, but the truth is, this story didn't begin with a screenwriter in Hollywood. It didn't even begin with the Japanese novelist who wrote the original book. This story begins centuries ago, in a country where the dead don't rest, where ghosts aren't just campfire stories. They're a part of the culture, a part of the spiritual fabric of everyday life. To understand The Ring, you have to understand Japan, and you have to understand what the Japanese have believed about the dead for a very, very long time. In Western horror, ghosts are usually simple. They haunt a house, they rattle chains, they flicker the lights and slam doors in the middle of the night. They're disturbing, sure, but they're almost always tied to a place. Stay away from the haunted house and you're fine. Japanese ghosts don't work like that. In Japanese folklore, there is a category of spirit called a eerie. The word translates roughly to faint spirit or dim spirit. A eerie is the soul of someone who has died but cannot move on. Something is holding them here, unfinished business, an improper burial, a wrong that was never made right. They are trapped between the world of the living and whatever comes after. And they are not tied to a location. They are tied to an emotion, a grievance, a debt that the living world still owes them. But there is a specific type of eerie that is far more dangerous than the rest. They're called onryo, vengeful spirits. And they are not just trapped here. They are furious. An onryo is created when someone dies in a state of extreme suffering. Not just pain, suffering, betrayal, injustice. The kind of anguish that is so deep and so total that it fundamentally changes the nature of the soul itself. The person who died no longer exists. What comes back is something else. Something twisted by rage into a force that exists for one purpose only: to make the living experience the same suffering that destroyed them. Their appearance is described the same way across centuries of Japanese literature and art. Skin drained of all color, pale as bone. A white burial kimono, the garment the dead are dressed in before cremation in Japanese tradition. And long, black hair, unkempt, wild, falling over the face in thick, tangled curtains that completely obscure whatever expression lies beneath. The hair is significant. In traditional Japanese culture, a woman's hair was carefully maintained, pinned up, controlled. It was a symbol of order and femininity. And onryo's hair is the opposite of that. It represents the complete unraveling of the person they once were. Everything that was composed and human has come apart. You can find depictions of onryo in Japanese art going back to the Edo period, the 1600s and 1700s. Woodblock prints show these pale, floating figures with their white robes and their cascading black hair, hovering above the living with expressions you can never quite see. They became central figures in kabuki theater, in ghost stories told during summer festivals, in the spiritual imagination of an entire civilization. One of the most famous onryo in Japanese literature is Oiwa, from a story called Yosuya Kaiden, written in 1825. Oiwa was a loyal wife whose husband wanted to be rid of her so he could marry a younger, wealthier woman. So he poisoned her. The poison didn't kill her immediately. Instead, it disfigured her. Her hair fell out in clumps. Her face swelled and distorted. One eye drooped shut. And when she finally saw what had been done to her, The shock and grief killed her. She came back as an onryo, and her husband's life became a waking nightmare. Everyone he looked at wore Oiwa's ruined face. Every lantern he lit flickered with her image. He could not escape her. She wasn't haunting a house. She was haunting him. But there's another legend, an older one that connects even more directly to the story that would eventually become The Ring. The legend of Okiku. Okiku was a servant in the household of a samurai during the Edo period. Her master owned a collection of 10 ceramic plates, priceless family heirlooms that had been passed down through generations. Okiku was responsible for their care. One day, one of the plates went missing. Some versions of the story say it was stolen by another member of the household. Some say it was hidden deliberately to frame her, but the result was the same. Okiku was accused. She counted the plates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. She counted them again and again. 9, always 9. The 10th plate was gone and she could not produce it. Her master demanded a confession. Okiku swore she was innocent. She begged him to believe her. He didn't. Some versions of the legend say he tortured her first. Others say it was quick, but every version ends the same way. He killed her, and he threw her body into a well. In Japanese folklore, wells are not ordinary places. They are thresholds, boundaries between the surface world and something deeper, something underground, something connected to the realm of the dead. Water, in Shinto and Buddhist tradition, is a conduit. It carries spiritual energy. A well is a place where that energy pools and concentrates. To throw a body into a well is not just to dispose of it. It is to plant a seed in the most spiritually fertile ground imaginable. And that seed grew. After Okiku's death, the people who lived in that household began hearing something at night, rising from the well, a voice, a woman's voice, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then silence. A long, horrible silence where the 10th number should have been. And then it would start again, every night, without end. Okiku could not rest. The injustice of her death was too great. She was trapped in an eternal loop of counting, reaching for an answer that would never come, reliving the moment of her accusation over and over in the darkness at the bottom of that well. A wronged woman, betrayed by someone with power over her, murdered, thrown into a well, returning as a spirit that cannot be silenced. That is the legend of Okiku, written centuries before a novelist named Koji Suzuki was ever born. Remember that story, because Suzuki clearly did. Sadako Yamamura. In Suzuki's 1991 novel Ring, Sadako's story mirrors the folklore almost exactly, but filtered through a modern lens. Sadako was not a servant in an Edo period household. She was a girl born in mid-20th century Japan. But like Okiku, like Oiwa, like every onryo before her, she was someone who possessed something that the people around her could not accept. Sadako had psychic abilities, not vague intuitions, not lucky guesses. She could project images directly into people's minds, force them to see things that weren't there. She could sense events before they happened, move objects without touching them. As a child, these abilities were a source of wonder. Her mother, Shizuko, had similar gifts, a history of psychic sensitivity that ran through the family like a bloodline curse of its own. But wonder has a short lifespan when it lives next to fear. As Sadako grew older, the people around her became increasingly uncomfortable. Neighbors whispered. Colleagues of her family's associates kept their distance. There is a concept in Japanese culture called the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. Anything that deviates from the norm Anything that disrupts the social order is pressured back into conformity, and if it can't conform, it is removed. Sadako could not conform. What she was couldn't be hidden or suppressed or explained away. The details vary between the novel and its adaptations, but the core of the story remains the same. Sadako was betrayed by someone she should have been able to trust. She was attacked, and she was thrown into a well. Imagine the darkness. Stone walls so narrow your shoulders brush against them on both sides. The air is cold and damp and tastes like iron and wet earth. Above you, there is a circle of grey sky, the opening of the well. But it's so far above you that it looks like a coin. You scream. The sound bounces off the walls and comes back to you, distorted, like someone mocking you from just out of sight. You claw at the stone. Your fingernails crack and split against the moss-covered surface. Blood runs down your wrists. It mixes with the standing water at your feet. No one comes. Hours pass, then days. You stop screaming because your voice is gone. You stop clawing because your hands are too damaged to grip anything. And somewhere in that darkness, in that silence, something inside you changes. The boundary between your pain and your rage dissolves. The boundary between your mind and the physical world dissolves. You are no longer a person suffering. You are suffering itself, given form, given purpose. When Sadako finally died at the bottom of that well, what remained was not a ghost in any traditional sense. It was an imprint, a psychic scar burned into the fabric of reality itself. Her rage, her abilities, her suffering. They fused together into a kind of signal, a transmission, and eventually that signal found its way onto a videotape. The images on the tape made no logical sense. Fragmented, dreamlike, disturbing in a way that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to something deeper, something primal. But the images were not the point. The point was the connection. Anyone who watched the tape became a receiver for Sadako's signal. They were tuned to her frequency. And once that connection was established, a clock started ticking.
7 days.
In 1998, Suzuki's novel was adapted into a Japanese film called Ringu. It became one of the most successful horror films in Japanese history. Audiences watched a journalist trace the origin of the cursed tape, following a trail of unexplained deaths backward to its source, and the film delivered them to a single scene that would become the most iconic moment in modern horror. A television turning on by itself, static filling the screen, and a figure crawling out of the well, across a room, and through the glass of the TV screen, into the real world. In 2002, Hollywood remade it. The Ring, starring Naomi Watts, moved the story to the rain-soaked Pacific Northwest and earned over $250 million worldwide. But neither the Japanese original nor the American remake were what made this story immortal. What made it immortal was the mechanism. Think about what the curse actually requires. Someone watches the tape. They're terrified. They have 7 days. And the only escape, the only way to survive, is to copy the tape and make someone else watch it. You pass the curse forward. You live. They inherit the countdown. The chain grows. It accelerates. It cannot be stopped. The curse doesn't spread through supernatural force. It spreads through human nature, through the one thing that people have never, in all of human history, been able to resist doing when they encounter something frightening. Sharing it. Koji Suzuki wrote Ring in 1991. Before the internet as we know it, before social media, before anyone on earth had heard the phrase going viral, and yet he described with almost surgical precision exactly how information would move through the modern world Content appears, someone watches it, they share it, someone else watches it, they share it, it spreads, it accelerates, and once it reaches a certain velocity, it becomes completely impossible to contain. He didn't write a ghost story. He reached back through centuries of Japanese folklore, through Okiku counting her plates in the darkness, through Oiwa's ruined face appearing in every lantern, through generations of Onryo rising from wells and waterways with their white robes and black hair and bottomless rage, and he translated all of it into a single modern metaphor, a curse that spreads like content, a ghost that haunts you through a screen. He wrote a prophecy, and we've been living inside it ever since. Somewhere out there, on a forgotten VHS tape in a dusty attic, or uploaded to some abandoned corner of the internet where nobody looks anymore. What if there really was something you were never supposed to watch, something patient, something waiting for the next person curious enough to press play? Because in the world of The Ring, the curse only survives if people keep watching. And we never stop watching. If stories like this are the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, subscribe to Last Known Report. Every episode, we dig into the darkest corners of the unknown. The cases no one can explain, the legends no one wants to believe, and the truths that might be worse than fiction. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.